much for joining us, Helen. We'll start maybe with a bit about where you're located. I think you're in one of the most beautiful parts of the world, especially during this pandemic times.
Okay, we're located on the south coast of Western Australia in a town called Albany, about 20 minutes out of town on the banks of the Calgon River. Albany is about 400 kilometres south of Perth, and very beautiful part of the world, stunning coastline. We've got the Parongarups and the Stirling Range National Park not too far away from us, and it's one of the most biologically, from a floral point of view, diverse areas of the world. It's a biodiversity hotspot just to the east of us, and it's quite a mild climate, so we don't get the sort of terribly hot temperatures that Perth gets. We do get the odd day around 40 each summer, but we don't tend to get continuous runs of it. More likely to be sort of mid-20s through to 30. Flower farming when in stinking hot temperatures would be very trying, but generally, we're relatively mild. And the other good thing about our climate is that we have quite wet winters, but we don't generally get frost. Occasionally we get a little bit, but not enough to do any lasting damage.
Sounds like the perfect place to be to grow flowers.
It's a pretty perfect climate for growing flowers, actually. Yeah. Can't grow peonies because we don't get, it's not cold enough, but everything else is fair game.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. What's your water supply there at the farm?
So we don't have any scheme water. So we catch water onto, from our roof into big tanks. We have about 300,000 litres of tank capacity on the farm, hooked up to various roofs. So that is enough for the house and for the potting table. And then for the garden beds, we have a soak, which is very reliable, and we pump water from that. So it's a sort of underground source that results in a bit of a dam that just keeps filling itself over, well, just all year round, really. It doesn't seem to ever, you can pump from it and the level's just the same the next morning. So that when we bought this property, one of the key things we were looking for was a reliable water source, which at that time wasn't for flower farming, but was just so I could have a big garden. Yeah. So it served us well. And we irrigate all of our beds with sub-mulch brown piping. I'm not sure what the technical name for it is, but that sort of works quite well because it's just gets to the roots where it needs to be. We do have, as anyone working with pumps would probably relate to, we do have ongoing problems with pumps. They break down, or filters get clogged, or pipes that are pumping that the water is transported in get clogged. And my husband, thankfully, is very good at troubleshooting pump problems.
Your garden, how big is it? What are you growing?
Well, we've got 2,000 square metres of fairly intense cutting garden, and then probably a couple of acres in addition to that, which is more just a decorative sort of garden with fruit trees and veggie patch and terraces in front of the house with perennials and roses. So we have a large David Austin rose garden, which is also part of the more decorative side of things. Yeah. And we also have 200 vines of Pinot that we produce Pinot from. and Jim's just moved the fence out to put a little bit more in. He won't move it for my flowers, but his one has got a little bit of action happening on it. And I grow a mix of native and garden flowers. So from a native point of view, I've got obviously just things like eucalyptus foliages and acacia foliage, grevilleas, kangaroo paws, flannel flowers, billy buttons, straw flower, and thryptomene, bit of wax flower, and that's probably about all. I think I said billy buttons. But yeah, just a general sort of pretty mix of natives that I can use, and they're the mainstay over winter for work if people want bouquets or weddings or whatever. And then from the garden flower side of things, I grow a lot of roses. So I've got probably 350 roses, which are a mix of David Austins and hybrid teas, mainly in those sort of colours that brides like, and a few other ones that are great for autumn arrangements like honey Dijon and hot cocoa, and a few things that brides tend not to go for, but occasionally I'll get someone who's yes, they are beautiful, but yes, and then we've got dahlias, zinnias, cosmos, phlox, foxgloves, delphiniums, ranunculus and anemones are great in early spring. Really, anything you see in my arrangements, I've grown at the farm.
And you're able to source almost 100% from your farm?
Yes, I do. There's a young girl at Millbrook Flower Farm, Jess, who is got a few rows of flowers in. So sometimes Jess has things that I can purchase from her. So it's great that she's now growing a little bit of stuff as well. It just means that I have a little backup there if I need to. I initially in the early days was getting a little bit of material down from the markets, the wholesale markets, but often it wasn't in great condition when it arrived and I couldn't use it. And so I've just decided it's better just to go with what I've got in the garden on the day. I've always got more than enough, even if I do get a little bit stressed a week or two beforehand. It seems to come together on the day. So with plenty of blooms to spare. So it's a good way to work.
Yeah. And with working as a florist with your own farm and your clients, do you need to have that conversation up front to manage everyone's expectations a bit, or are you getting clients who like what you do anyway and are aware of that already?
I make sure that any inquiries are aware of how I work seasonally and that I won't source from elsewhere. Because if I get someone who kind of wants exotic things mixed in with my flowers, I did do that once and I regretted it. It just didn't work for me and the way I work. So I've decided that it's better just to let people know that I'll be as close as possible to their colour palette, and my website has the sort of work I do. And really at the end of the day, I want people coming to me because they love my style of flowers. I'm not the cheapest, so if they're coming to me looking for the cheapest quote, then they're not going to get it anyway. So yeah, I think I'd rather do less weddings with people that really appreciate the fresh, scented, beautiful flowers that I grow. So floral design and gardening is a great combination for me because I'm seeing things from seed through to finished bouquets or table centres or whatever, and that gives me a great deal of satisfaction at the end of the day when I deliver beautiful flowers for somebody's really special occasion, whether it's a wedding or, sadly, this year there've been quite a few funerals that I've delivered flowers for family members and things, but it's a joy to be able to go through the whole process from seed through to finished bouquet. And I enjoy the physical work of the garden. So it's a nice balance of hard physical work and creativity for me. Ticks all the boxes.
Yeah. And would you say your farmer and florist work is about 50-50 or 60-40? How do you go through the year? Is it a balance?
At this time of the year, there's a lot of deadheading at this time of the year, but there's less physical work. So the physical work happens mainly over the cooler months of the year, which suits me perfectly because I don't particularly like the heat. And probably from May through until late August is our busiest time of the year in terms of hard physical labour in the garden, because there's a huge amount of pruning to be done with the fruit trees, the vineyard and the roses, and then cutting back all the perennials. We also have the garden around the cottage, so we've got to manage that as well. We then amend the beds with animal manures and mulch heavily with pea straw. So that's our busiest time of the year for hard physical labour. This time of the year, a couple of hours early in the morning, I wake at sort of 5, so a couple of hours in the cool of the day just with deadheading or replanting or succession planting. So there's a continuous ongoing program of seed sowing and potting up and planting out that goes on in the background, and I have kept pretty meticulous notes over the last few years, so I kind of know when I'm due to get the next lot of things going and what things I've got going too late and haven't worked. So I do keep some notes and just make sure I don't repeat any mistakes. And there's some things that I just don't have a lot of luck with. So like larkspurs, I can't get them to germinate. It just, it's very annoying, but I just have very sporadic germination of larkspurs. I do all the things that they say, put them in the fridge and whatever else, and just don't have a lot of luck with them. But
that's other thing. Climate, it mustn't be you, because look what else you're growing. I actually started a few seeds this year in our courtyard garden, and larkspurs, I was determined to plant those. So I was lucky, but I don't know what I did. I put them in the fridge. I did all the things, and I was just waiting and watching the soil for 3-4 weeks, and then they started to germinate, and they're flowering now. I can't believe it, but it did feel like that it was never going to happen. But so if I can grow them in my first year of planting from seed, then it can't be you, Helen. It must be the climate. Blame the climate.
Yes, I'm not sure, but yeah, there are some things that do take an awfully long time to germinate, and it is worth just keeping those seed trays off to the side and just seeing whether something comes up, because very occasionally you can leave things for 3 or 4 months and you think nothing's going to come up, and then obviously just the conditions are just perfect at that moment, and up they pop. So yeah, I do tend not to throw my seed trays out too hastily when I look like I've had an abject failure.
Yes,
but we've got quite a good setup. We've got sort of 9 tables that fit 6x4 seed trays on them, so 24 seed trays on each of the 9 tables. Right. And my husband set an overhead watering system, which is fresh water, because we've found the soap water tends to not agree with the seedlings.
Uh-huh.
I think maybe there's a little bit of salt, just a touch of salt in it. And they get watered twice a day with fresh water. So that's, I think that's pretty critical to have a good, and it's under the shade of a tree, so it gets kind of dappled light. So I don't have any shade house or polytunnels or anything like that, or a greenhouse. It's just all growing outside on tables under a canopy of eucalypt.
Yeah, beautiful. But how many years have you been doing this for?
2013, I think I actually put the first beds in, which were a couple of rows of kangaroo paws that I thought I would just sell at the markets. I had no plans to do anything really. And then I ended up doing a garden design course for a month in London because I became so intrigued with some of the beautiful imagery that I was seeing on Instagram from Susan Hatwood of the Blue Carrot and Joe Rodwell from Joe Flowers. And I just thought that is the kind of flowers I want to make. And I've always wanted to make, but I've just never seen them before anywhere. So when I came home, and my daughter had actually also done a floristry course in London the year before as part of a gap year, so that the aim was for her to do something creative in her gap year before starting university that would perhaps lead to a part-time job that was creative while she was studying. So we extended the garden when I got back from my course, which was a year after Abby. And it's just sort of taken off from there. And a friend sort of said to me, well, what are you going to do with all these flowers, Helen? I mean, they're not going anywhere. So that sort of was a little bit of a bomb underneath me, I guess. And I went and approached a local like a farm fresh store, and put a few bouquets in there, and they sold quite well. So that was a good start. And then a couple of people asked me to do weddings, and I thought, well, I hadn't planned on doing weddings, but I thought I would give them a go. And after they were two very big weddings, quite different. One was in Perth, and it was beautiful garden flowers, and one was in Bremer Bay, which is a little bit further along the coast from us, and it was a big native wedding. Both were very big weddings, and that sort of got me started. I had an awful lot of nerves and continued to have an awful lot of nerves for the year or so after doing those two. But now I don't generally get particularly anxious about the design work. And I just enjoy it, actually. I love going out and picking in the week leading up to an event and envisaging what I'll be using and how I'll put it together. And every event is a little bit different because things in the garden are a little bit different. So no bouquets really look the same. And I approach, the morning, sort of Friday when I'm getting things ready, it was generally a Friday, with great excitement and anticipation, really, of what it's going to end up looking like. So,
It just must be such a buzz to have grown a lot of that from seed, under the shade of a tree from seed, and now it's off to a wedding. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I just love it. It's good. I really feel like finally at my age, I'm not to say that I haven't enjoyed all the other things I've done in my life, but I sort of feel like I'm really doing something that ticks pretty well all the boxes for me at this stage of life.
I can imagine. It must be very satisfying. Yeah. So with having done flower farming for since 2014, have you any shortcuts or hacks or learnings for anyone else that is starting out, or is it just really the experience of going through it really does matter.
I think there's so much information available that wasn't available. Floret obviously is a massive source of practical growing advice for people. But really with growing things, it is just trial and error, and you've got to give things a go. You can't be scared, and you're constantly learning. I've been growing a big garden, since I had my first child 30 years ago. So I've got a lot of accumulated gardening knowledge, I guess, and a bit of a feeling for plants, and I can see when they're stressed, and I tend not to sweat on the small stuff. Like, I'm not bug obsessed or anything like that. I find new gardeners are very obsessed about, my leaves looks like it's got a little bite out of it here, or it looks like it's got a spot here. Or I tend not to notice things like that too much. It's the overall health of the plants that is really the important thing. And if they're producing flowers well, then that's a pretty good indication that things are coming along quite nicely. And a little bit of, a bit of black spot, or a bit of a chew out of a leaf somewhere or something, is just neither here nor there, and certainly not worth getting stressed about. The first wedding I did in Perth, the person whose daughter it was said that one of the, his sister actually had come up to him and said, "Oh, there was a caterpillar on the table." And I thought, well, there you go. And I think he made some comment like, well, that's what you get with homegrown flowers, beautiful homegrown flowers. And it was a talking point to flowers, because they were quite keen gardeners at the wedding. But I just almost felt quite proud that there was a little caterpillar that had made its way out of the arrangement and onto the table. I certainly wasn't stressed about it, because that's just what happens. I mean, flowers that grow in a garden haven't been sprayed within an inch of their lives, and they're going to have a few little imperfections, whether it's the stem's a bit wonky, or I actually think or the leaves a bit motley, or something. I think it actually adds to the charm of the whole arrangement. But
absolutely, I know they come from nature. Let's just embrace the holistic kind of picture of that. Do you have wildlife you need to sort of discourage from the garden, or?
Well, we regularly have kangaroos hopping through the garden, but to be honest, I've had no trouble in the cutting garden with wildlife eating anything, apart from the initial establishment of the garden. Yeah, we have bees. My husband was putting in extending the vineyard over the last couple of days, and just where he was putting in a post, which is next to a little section of re-veg planting that we sowed a few years ago, there was a large swarm of bees on one of the native melaleuca bushes. So we had a spare hive in the shed, so that is now in the hive.
Oh, wow.
And so the whole process sort of continues. So it's interesting way of working, and quite.
It seems very, you've got your bees, you're mulching the garden, the water source. It's very circular and sustainable as a holistic operation.
Well, it's kind of just happened by accident. I mean, it's really what my husband's had bees since he was a little boy. He got given a beehive for Christmas once. He grew up on a farm, and so they're all just things that interest us. Jim likes, bottling fruit in summer, and he's always wanted his own vineyard. So, we've sort of just added things over the years. We've been here since 2004 to the garden that are our interests, and it's just sort of a consuming passion, really.
Yeah. Well, if you're not passionate about it, then it's going to be more like
it's all just hard work. Definitely.
Oh, thank you so much. I could talk all day. It's very inspiring, and Yeah, it's just beautiful. Your imagery and your style, and it's just so beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoy it. So,
Yeah.
it's no hardship.